Thank you for your patience. Ooh. Oh yeah, this is right. Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry. No idea what happened. Basically, my computer went offline. I thought that my internet went down, but it wasn't the internet that went down. It was just my machine was not connected to the internet. Just my machine. And it was giving me internet errors and I'm like, what the hell's going on? But when we checked everywhere else, it was fine. So welcome back. Sorry about the trouble. And I just want to say thank you so much to Airplay, Mentis, and John for sticking around. Oh, looks like Airplay didn't stick around. He left. He's welcome to come back if he wants. Obviously.
Looks like you're in phone mode though.
I'm in
Looks
what
like the
mode?
stream is streaming. The stream is streaming in phone resolution for some reason.
Oh no, that's because I have 2 streams going. So I am streaming on YouTube horizontally and vertically for people who might be on my phones. The reason for that is because YouTube Shorts has an advantage on the algorithm because YouTube is trying to compete with TikTok. So they're essentially bumping up the, let's say, the views or the visibility of vertical streams. I learned this from like a professional streamer that does like programming and stuff. His name is Nutty, and there was another guy that's also made videos about this, and they were like, well, if you want to get more exposure, do a vertical stream as well as a horizontal stream. And even though the vertical streams are visually painful, because they are for me anyways, for some reason, because everybody's on their phones, particularly Zoomers, they're gonna be more likely to come across it. So that's why there is a vertical stream.
Cover your bases.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks guys for your patience. So they were talking the whole time off stream. I'm on mobile and the stream is vertical. Yeah, so if you're on your phone, you can look at this vertically. I don't know why you would, but some people, that's what they're used to, you know? But I'm streaming both horizontally and vertically, and I should be streaming to Rumble. Yes, we should be streaming to Rumble as well. And we are, so we are good. Yes. Okay. Sorry about all that. So before I was so rudely interrupted, I wanted to talk a little bit about things that are going on in the games industry. So firstly, happy anniversary, Gamergate. Today is was it technically the anniversary of Gamergate? No, that would be the Gamers Are Dead articles, right? This is the Zoe post. This was like the precursor to that. So anyway, are you guys still there? Or am I talking to myself?
No, we're here.
Okay.
I'm still here.
Okay, cool.
Good manners today, yeah.
Yeah, no, fair enough. All right, let me share my screen now. The thing that I wanted to talk to. Panzer says, redacted him with hammers or with a wood chipper. Oh, you guys are talking about something else. Is this just like, I don't want to stream this. I just want to screen share. Yeah. All right. So I want to share this. Wait till it loads up. Hopefully this doesn't kill my internet. And this is, well, let's watch this video. Let me know if you guys can hear it. Okay.
There's something weird that has happened in the gaming community. I'm serious too when I say this. For some reason, everybody in the gaming community wants games to fail. It's very bizarre. Like the whole thing with XDefiant is still like stumps me to this day. People complain about not having enough games to play. But when new games come out, even before they have played it, they're like, that game sucks, I'm not going to play it. Listen, man, if we keep tearing down these studios trying to make good games, like, yeah, not every single one is going to be fun and not every single one is going to be a hit. But if we're sitting here, like, preying on its downfall before the game even comes out, what do you think's going to happen? Nobody's going to be investing in gaming and making new games. And you're not going to have shit to fucking play. You're going to be sitting here playing MW2 Remastered Edition. You're going to be sitting here trying to play fucking the same old games for the 1,000th time because
Doing that already.
these billionaires and fucking multi-million billion-dollar publishers, they're not gonna greenlight any new games, any new concepts, any new IP. I mean, I try to put myself in the shoes of myself when I was like 16 years old, but I can't. I was excited for new games when they came out. The problem is now we have too many options. We've seen too many different games. We've seen too many different ways to interact with games. Like, back in the day, bro, when in 2007, when Halo 3, Gears of War 1, and Call of Duty Modern Warfare dropped the same fucking year, bro, we were lined up outside of GameStops, whether it was in a mall or attached to a fucking Hollywood Video, sitting there waiting, camped out, drinking fucking Mountain Dew, waiting for these new games for the midnight release. Everybody was so excited about it. Now when new games come out, we're fucking sitting around a goddamn fire witch artifact, like doing a satanic ritual for the game to fail miserably. I don't really get it. There's something weird.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So this like created quite the conversation.
Ask questions. Consumer product.
Yes, right. Don't. Why are you? Why are the standards like? What happened to gaming? And it's funny because he's kind of answering his own question because he's like, "Oh, we used to wait, in lines that went around the corner from a GameStop to get our hands on the new Gears of War or Halo or whatever the hot game was." And now that enthusiasm isn't there. So
well, yeah, because back in the day, people could count on the fact that those games would actually be good. But now that AAA studios are all run by just complete idiots, really, that don't actually know what they're doing, now people aren't excited for new games anymore because they're just all kind of press X to talk to NPC walking simulator games. The gameplay, the actual challenge is gone. People can't actually count on AAA studios to produce games that are new, exciting, and interesting anymore.
Yeah,
that's just kind of that's a symptom of, again, the fact that a lot of sort of far left ideologues have injected themselves into the industry. And so you have these studios no longer filled with people who actually know what they're doing. Now you have maybe 30% of the studio knows what they're doing, and then the other 70% are just free riders who are just leftist ideologues or whatever, or diversity hires or whatever, and they don't actually know what they're doing.
Yeah, one of the things he said, though, is kind of laughable, where he's just like, if we don't buy these games, you're just going to get the same thing over and over again. That's what we have already. And, I would say to this, because I don't agree, especially that video that I put out today for Defect. It's a brand new indie game. It's coming out soon-ish. I don't know too much about it other than, like, I saw it this morning. It kicked my face in the best way, and I'm like, I have to tell everybody how great this is. Because
it's essentially like a team. Was it like it's like Judge Dredd, basically? Like if somebody didn't have the rights to Judge Dredd, made Judge Dredd the game. It's like, well, yeah, why didn't we get this sooner?
Yep. One of my friends that I knew back in college, at least, he's one of the senior design leads on it. So that's why I even know about it. It was just in my Facebook feed this morning. It had like next to no views. I put a video out on it a couple hours ago, like just because it was like I was so hyped about it. And that's the thing, is like there will always be passion. There will always be people who are willing to do it for nothing and put it out on Steam. And we just have to find new platforms and not play to the idea that we're going to do stuff for Microsoft and go along with all their weird arbitrary bullshit, or Sony's, or even Nintendo's for that matter. And not to say that Steam's perfect. There are other indie platforms, and that's part of the thing that we should really make this Gamergate 2 cultural about, is actually supporting the independents and not playing the game that they want us to play, which is just, taking on the shame of being the bad audience that doesn't know how to, accept that it's just the way games are made nowadays.
Another reason why intellectual property isn't really necessary.
Yes, we should talk about that a little bit. I got a super chat. I want to read it really quick. Thank you from Serathis. He gave us 1,000 huffs. I think a huff is a Hungarian currency of some kind. So thank you for the huffs, Serathis. And he says, I wasn't aware that ICMI 24 was here in Hungary Also, I have been having more fun with old games. Doom just had a new episode released, and it's great. Doom, like the well, like when you say Doom just had a new episode released, is that like somebody made a mod for it or something for the old Doom, or are you talking about Doom 2016, 2014, whenever that one came out? Well, thank
Yeah,
you
you
for
gotta
that.
specify which Doom.
Yeah, I don't know what Doom you're talking about, but thank you for the super chat. He says it's a Hungarian forint. Oh, getting. I don't know. I don't want to know how much that is in American dollars. I'm just gonna go with not as much as you think. So, but thank you so much, Serathis, for that. Doom from 1994. Oh, so the O is an official episode for Doom 2. So they're still making content for Doom.
Oh yeah, my
Apparently.
friend Dan was telling me how he's playing that yesterday. Who tangentially is actually involved in the original Gamergate. He was part of the Boston Game Fig, where the I'm off to Japan and I'm just leaving everybody holding this situation. He was one of the people who had to clean it up, but yeah, he said he was streaming it yesterday too. So I wasn't
Yeah.
sure, but I thought
Yeah. So, let's talk a little bit about what this guy's thesis is, I guess. He's essentially saying that people should be buying games because otherwise consequences. I don't even know what they are. But what is you know what this is? You know what this is? I have a term for this. I don't know, maybe it fits. Mentis, you let me know what you think. There are people who will justify awful products just because it's a brand that they like, or because they believe that they have a duty to support an industry or a corporation, regardless of how that corporation actually treats its customers or its fan base. And I call them culture junkies because they're addicted to content. And they don't care. Like, they will make excuses. Like, they'll go watch whatever the new Marvel thing is, or the new Star Wars thing, or the new Star Trek thing. And then, you'll ask them, what did you think? And they'll be like, well, it wasn't the strongest, but I still enjoy it. And they'll like make excuses for how awful it is because they can't bear to just stop consuming it. They're addicted. Yes,
Consume
right.
product. That's kind of why I said, so you're right on that. My main take on that, I think I've actually already said this on one of my videos before, but my main concern on it is that the eternal product consumer is at its core just a form of anti-intellectualism. It's a form of you're not allowed to actually question what is in these sacred Marvel movies. You're not allowed to think about the philosophy we're being sold in these games or notice anything wrong with the philosophy. How dare you notice? Stop noticing things. Stop thinking about these things. Stop caring if the stories in these games that are now narratively driven and pressing X to continue instead of actually having gameplay. You're not allowed to question if the stories are actually good or if it's just crappy propaganda. You're not even allowed to notice that it's propaganda. You're not supposed to think about these things. And if you do think about these things, you're a loser. You're a weirdo for thinking about these things. You're not allowed to question any kind of thing. You're not allowed to use logic, not allowed to use reason.
Yep.
Do not ask questions, just consume product. It is just pure anti-intellectualism. You're not allowed to think. You're just supposed to consume.
How effective do you think that is on
Well, sadly, it's a little
consumers?
bit effective because clearly these people actually exist, but all you really have to do is point it out, and a lot of people will not fall for it.
Yeah.
I mean, once you realize that this kind of thinking is just kind of not thinking at all, really. It's thinking about anti-thinking.
right.
And you kind of realize that it's really cringe. It's very cringe.
Right.
John, go ahead.
That's kind of the push though towards like all this arrested development, keeping turning everybody into iPad kids to where everything's just closed knit systems that you can only have so much access to, and you can only touch the overlay screen of the button and not any of the actual mechanics behind how it works. This is just this is the digital version of burning the great library and just taking us into a digital dark age. Just kind of making sure everybody's good and smooth brained and doesn't question the authority. They have to know their role and dutifully take supporters, and just and that's what this
Oh
guy's doing,
yeah.
is he's giving support to that whole idea that like that we're somehow in the wrong because we responded to something, and they call it a reaction, but it's a response when someone goes and spends 2 years of time or more planning out a narrative content design, and they do all this kind of stuff. That's them showing what their responsibility is. And so when we respond to that in kind, and it's not a reaction, it's quite literally just, this is what you brought me, so I have to actually be honest with you. And if you're going to disregard that and just say, oh, this is all about emotional bullshit, then that was evidently just what this whole setup was so that you could have the trap to sit here and say, oh, the argument's about how now you're unhinged and all this kind of stuff, rather than the actual topics that even brought it into light, the meddlesome corruption that is at play in the development cycle.
Oh yeah, and sadly, there's actually some success in that, in turning them into sort of smooth-brained consumers. A really big generational shock for me was when I realized not so much the older Zoomers don't really have this problem, but I noticed that a lot of younger Zoomers actually are less technically savvy than millennials. And that's something that back in the day just wasn't the thing. During the 90s or something, it was just kind of accepted that, oh, the younger generation knows more about tech than the older generation because we're being raised in it. But now that's actually not really a thing anymore. A lot of younger people aren't learning how computers and tech actually works. They're just learning to use a screen. They're just learning to use a tablet and be like a little monkey tapping on their tablet screen, consuming product, and not actually learning how anything works. You show any of these these young kids a command prompt, and they think it's some kind of voodoo magic or something. And it's just, no, this is just how computers work at their core. Or you try to explain computer logic to them, like the on-off logic and gates and how these things actually function. Again, they just think it's some kind of voodoo magic. They don't actually know how anything works. You try and get a kid to install Linux, and they can't do it, which is just that's not how it worked back in the early 2000s, at least. Kids could install Linux all the time, but now the next generation of kids, that's again more voodoo magic to them. They don't actually know how any of this stuff works. And there's definitely a interesting conspiracy theory on that, on is it intentional? And yeah, some of it probably is intentional. They want people to not actually tinker with their devices. And it's just kind of a way of maintaining the intellectual property monopoly and making sure people are only consuming the approved content.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're doing everything they can to keep everybody just caught in that bubble.
So
Feedback
you're
on the discussion about intellectual property.
you're back now. That's where we got cut off. Airplay. Thank you for reminding me. So
Yeah.
go ahead and tell us, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've definitely got opinions on intellectual property, considering that most of the legal expenses for this documentary, most of the expenses, period, for this documentary revolves around legal expenses for, like, just copyright and clearance is just getting approved for just. And my film relies heavily on third-party material, and so right now I'm currently cataloging every individual piece of third-party material that I used in the film. It probably gonna be in the hundreds, and and I'm gonna have to send that to a lawyer, and even before they even look at, and one lawyer that I consulted with said that it'll cost over $5,000 before, just for them to look at it, and then either $200 to $700 per hour for them to review all of the material. And once that's done, gonna need errors and omission to make sure that everything is cleared. And after that, it's gonna cost like around $600 a year for the errors and omissions insurance.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, there's entire industries on making sure that you pay for intellectual property and you're paying all of these fees for things that you shouldn't even have to pay because it's not real property rights. It's all just kind of fake nonsense. And the issue is that we just don't really we're supposed to have, in theory at least, in the way that the neoliberal clown world works, we are supposed to have at least fair use to kind of, sort of have a way to get around intellectual property restrictions. But the reality is, fair use only works so much as people are willing to sue for it.
Yeah.
Right.
So as soon as someone takes you to court, it doesn't actually matter if it's fair use or not. What matters is that now you have to pay all of these ridiculous fees simply because you're being sued, and you're just kind of hoping that the judge is not a moron and that he rules in your favor.
We
Because
used to
technically,
have-
pretty much every single fair use law should be, every single fair use courtroom case should be ruled in favor of the person who is using fair use, because again, it's fake anyway.
Right.
But occasionally the judge is an idiot.
Justice. But now, what we have is just legalese that's, enforced quite literally. They call it law enforcement, and that's what it's about, is just the enforcement of the law. It has nothing to do with justice. It's, it doesn't make sense because it makes billions.
Well, yeah, that's just another consequence of having a law that's based on statism rather than based on any kind of ethical model. That's, I mean, getting into the sort of Hoppian ANCAP theory, if you want to go into that, a lot of one of the ways that's actually achieved is that courts get replaced by private courts that rule on actual natural law ethics and actual philosophy, whereas now we don't do that. When you have a statist form of law, what happens is people just rule on what the law says. It's just people arguing over what the laws, the specifics, and the I's dotted and the T's crossed, and if someone fails, then now it's okay to put them into a box at gunpoint. That's pretty much how our law currently works. It's not actually about who's right or wrong, it's about how the law is actually written, and it doesn't really work.
Yep.
Sometimes it can work. Sometimes the law works and rules in favor of property rights, but a huge portion of time it does not. And so that's why you end up with a lot of non-violent offenders in jail. You end up with a lot of people being sued for very stupid reasons that shouldn't even have anything to do with the law, and because they don't, again, have anything to do with property rights. And you just have a lot of total nonsense going around. And I mean, we could talk about something like this all day. Like, it gets really,
Sure.
really evil. It gets into things like patent trolling and copyright trolling. And there's multiple documentaries, actually, in fact, on just how evil patent trolls and copyright trolls are, where they'll decide that they own the very idea of putting an app on the App Store and then just sue everybody who puts an app on the App Store. And it's all these lawyers are just exploiting these laws to gain money. They don't actually care if it's morally right or wrong. It just all goes through the court as whether or not it's against the law or not. And because the law is written by idiots, we're in this bad situation.
Well, I mean, there's also even worse around the corner. It's called safety and fairness policy that they're putting through as terms of service riders, and basically,
Oh boy.
their whole setup is that for the safety and fairness of the corporation, they reserve the right to censor you, and that's just part of the terms of service agreement. And so that's everything. That's why everything is being moved to service models and everything like that, so they can sidestep and circumvent laws, and instead just make it about privacy rights. And you've got all this arbitration caught up in it to make it all about the legalistic aspects of he who has the gold basically makes the rules, or can nickel and dime the other person to price them out of competition before they can even get started. And that sounds like what they're doing ostensibly to your documentary, and just pricing you left and right.
Well, yeah, and that's actually that's the intended purpose of a lot of patents and intellectual property rights, is that it's intended to create an unnatural monopoly that you now have to pay all of these people an insane amount of money. in ridiculous sums just to make your product. And it's just a way of maintaining that monopoly so that you can't compete with them. Hollywood doesn't want you competing. In fact, a lot of big Hollywood corporations, they lobby for these laws to exist. They know that they screw over the little guy. They know that it stifles competition. They know that it's preventing documentaries like this from getting out, and it's all intentional.
It's
Yep.
legalized racketeering. You have to pay protection money to see your way through the process, and if you don't have the money at the right time, and even if you have the money, they can still say take that out, and take that out. So it's they've slanted the table incredibly hard through a whole bunch of legal malfeasance over the last 30-40 years, especially. I mean, it was bad before, but this is something else entirely now.
Yeah, for sure. I got another super chat. I'm going to read it really quick. The Grizz gave us $10. Thank you, The Grizz. I'm going to play a little sound for you.
All right.
And he says, parents don't have time to be sitting at G-Stop, and kids are playing Roblox, FN, and MC. I'm not sure what those stand for, but I'm sure that's like really... Oh, Minecraft. I know that one.
Fortnite.
Oh, Fortnite. Yeah, sure. My nephew's into that. I think the demand for games like, for me, Sly 2, Jack and Dexter, don't have a high demanding audience, unfortunately. Well, I think that there is like a desire to shape what the industry looks like. And this is where a lot of this rejection is actually coming from gamers. Probably older ones, like, older millennials, Gen Xers, like myself, that, we don't necessarily... Like, when I was growing up and I was into games, let me switch my camera really quick. When I was growing up and I was into games, I was like, I wanted to see how advanced they could get. When I saw parallax scrolling and like mode 7 scaling, I was like, whoa, it couldn't possibly get more advanced than this, right? But obviously I wasn't prepared. But what I'm not happy with is that we are also getting to a point where we just don't own our own games. Like, if you buy games through Steam, you buy games through the Xbox network, you buy games through the PlayStation network, whatever. Unless you have a physical copy that isn't blocked by some, online only or always online license or something, do you even own it? And I don't think we do. There's obviously been a big push to make a lot of our property into something that is leased, rented, or we buy the license for, but we don't actually own the product. And this, by the way, is why if you can, I recommend that you try to get physical copies. So don't let GameStop die. Some games, by the way, you can't get any other way. You have to get the physical copies. There was this Transformers game that I was really into, or that I was interested in, and I never got it. And it was made by Platinum Games, and I don't remember what it's called, but I think it was called Devastation or something. And you can't buy it in any digital store. You have to go to a GameStop or buy it online, not Etsy or something. So,
live
but
service
one more thing I want to say, because some people are asking, will you do Q&A? Yeah, you guys can just send in super chats and ask questions, whatever you want to talk about, whatever. So yeah, go ahead and send. I guess I can get super chats, which is cool. And Rumble rants for those of you guys who are on Rumble. And yeah, just ask whatever you want to say. So I will take the time to read them. All right, John, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's all right. Well, I'm just saying the irony is these live service models are actually going to lead to the death of actual game economies. Time and time again, we keep seeing it happen over the last 2-3 years, especially. They've just been laying it on thick ever since COVID Hell World began. It just became live service model after live service model, and I truly believe they're doing that as a way to, they tried to push NFTs, but everybody saw through it, and so now they're just raising the price of games and blocking everything off to where you have to pay extra for the last few levels or this or that, and everything's just you're buying the outline of the game, and if you want to buy the actual context that goes in the chapter and verse, if you will, then that's gonna be a whole other cost of the game, because games are up to $130 now for the full game plus tax.
Oh God.
But hey,
But
you're
hey,
not
you're-
supposed to question that. You're supposed to consume the product. You need to just buy the product. So what if it's $100, $200? Just stop asking questions. Just buy the product. Oh my God, why are people not buying the product anymore? Why are all these studios going bankrupt? Oh
You can't
no.
do that.
Right?
What do
Oh,
you think
no.
of? Okay, so let's get into boycotts because you wanted to talk about why boycotts work, and I agree with you, but I want to hear your take on that. Let's talk about boycotts because everyone is pushing back on people making decisions with their money on what they want to spend it on, and a lot of people are rejecting this, gay race communist stuff that keeps coming out in every space. Paramount Pictures just shut down entirely, didn't they? And I think that Cartoon Network is gone, and Ubisoft is in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. So, what do you think?
Oh yeah, boycotts are absolutely effective. They're just physical removal. That's what's really happening is that these kind of companies are getting physically removed from the market because they've continuously made products that people do not actually want. And that's a great thing, actually. That's wonderful. It's great seeing them all on fire. I'm just kind of like, yeah, see more of that. And what people really need to understand is that things like ESG funding, because I talked about that on my recent sort of Gamergate video about how the Marxists sort of injected themselves into the game industry. People need to realize that ESG does not provide infinite funding to all of these game developers. That's not actually how it works. What it really does is it just provides an incentive for other companies to do business with them. And so they can get some investments through that way, through back channels. But those investments are not infinite money just because down the line.
You guys hear me?
Yeah, we're. Yep. Camera's
Okay,
on.
good. Yeah, no, it's all right. I just dropped out and dropped back in because Mentis stopped talking suddenly.
Did I stop talking?
Abruptly. Yeah, you did. You abruptly just stopped talking.
Oh,
Panzer says the Rothschilds. Of course, yeah. We know that.
Mentioning that.
They're the ones that did this, of course. The Rockefellers and the Rothschilds.
oh
Don't think
boy.
I don't know. Anyway, but you were saying about boycotts. I'm sorry. You just like the last 10 seconds.
Oh, the
10 seconds ago, when
I mean, I was just really pointing out that ESG money is not.
Yeah,
infinite.
ESG. That's what it was. It was ESG, BlackRock, ESG money.
Yeah, companies like BlackRock, they don't actually have as much influence as people think that they do. That's actually one huge misconception that people have is that they think that BlackRock and Vanguard
Yeah.
secretly own everything and are secretly running the government. And that's just not actually how it works. It's a lot more complicated than that. There's hundreds of more corporations involved in the whole lobbying and revolving door game. And ESG just kind of gives an incentive for certain companies to work together. It doesn't actually give people funding. Like, for instance, if you look at a company's finances, you're not going to find ESG money from Daddy Fink, $100 million in their freaking financial ledger. That's not actually
Right.
how it works. Some people
I've
think that that's how it works, but that's not actually how it works at all.
I've actually.
It's more just incentive drivers.
I did make a video about this, specifically this last GDC. They had a woman, I can't say her name right now, but she's from Arshcroft, like Rockefeller Foundation, and she's directly from the United Nations WFTB there, and she creates the financial funding models for the gaming industry specifically, and she was at GDC talking about it. So, I mean, it's not everything, but it is an aspect, and it's definitely got a pervasive effect on the issue.
Yeah, I mean, it mainly just incentivizes them to make content that is for the accepted opinions, but it doesn't change the fact that they still need to make a game that gamers actually want to buy. They still need to make the sales, they still need to turn a profit. And if we just refuse to buy their crappy games, it actually does hit them really hard. Because some people think, oh no, The government can just keep printing infinite money, which then gets funneled into BlackRock, which then gets funneled into ESG funds, and they'll just keep funding all of these game companies for hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars so that they can just keep making propaganda, regardless of whether or not anybody actually buys it. And that's just not actually how it works. Fortunately, that's not actually how it works. There is a serious limit to these things, and that's not actually how the money flows.
Not in totality, but like I said, it is definitely an aspect of what is going on, and it does have a very effective way of putting the intent into the game, where it otherwise probably wouldn't have been, because quite specifically, a lot of this goes back to climate change and shit, quite honestly, because that's where ESG kind of evolved out.
Sustainability, yeah.
Right.
It's like a.
By the way,
well,
is
I
anybody
think
else
that's
is your volume a little low for problematic white guy?
yeah. Problematic is really low. You maybe get close to your microphone if you can, or turn your gain up a little bit. I have him maxed out on Discord, but he's still coming in really low. What I was gonna say is, I think that the environmental thing is just like, I don't think it's what they actually care about. There's the saying, the thing is never really the thing. Like, the thing isn't about the thing. The thing is always a revolution. I'm not saying that BlackRock is necessarily a revolutionary, communist force, but they're definitely like a global thing, in my opinion. And when
they just manage funds. That's all they do. They're just managing funds. They're not really. That's another thing, is that BlackRock isn't actually as rich as people think that they are. For instance, if you look up the CEO of BlackRock, he doesn't actually have that high of a net worth. He doesn't have $1 trillion net worth. He's only worth maybe not nearly as much. They just simply manage the funds in a company's name. They don't actually fully control those funds.
So
They
like
just
a bank?
have it for somebody. Kind of, but not really. It's not really.
Yeah.
That's actually worth a whole other discussion on its own, and we kind of get into a huge tangent on how that works. But the main point is that BlackRock is not actually a $1 trillion corporation. It may seem like they are on paper, but not really. It's actually still the companies themselves that BlackRock is holding those funds for that really have those funds.
But what it creates, though, is pathways to kind of offset accountability, because you can always go and point at someone else and say, well, it's not me, it's this aspect. And so, like, all of it in totality makes the shit sketty with shit balls and butt sauce that they want everybody to, just scarf right on down.
Butt sauce.
Yep. And it also makes it hard to tell who's actually in control. And that's another thing that's somewhat intentional of the system, is that it makes it almost impossible to know who's to blame for all of this propaganda. And to some degree, it's very, very decentralized, because there's a lot of true believers out there who really do believe that DEI stuff is what consumers want. Because the thing is, they actually publish a lot of garbage research saying that DEI is good and DEI is profitable. If you actually look this up, there's various researching firms that are just basically yes men for the cathedral, where they'll just say that, oh yeah, what we're doing is profitable, what we're doing is what consumers want. And it's based on pure nonsense, of course, because they'll intentionally avoid actually controlling for any kind of variable that would show that they're wrong. It's basically p-hacking, another way of doing it, if you're familiar with p-hacking. And by not actually controlling for anything, they can make it seem like DEI is what people want. For instance, I recall I saw one specific study, I don't recall exactly what it was called, and what they did was they said that DEI is profitable because the highest earning films on Netflix have a lot of woke crap in it. And of course, they weren't controlling for how much funding went into the creation of those series.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, completely insane. absolutely insane to not actually control for the funding that went into the creation of them, and to instead say, "Oh, this show was successful, and this show had some wokeness in it, therefore wokeness is successful." It's just when that show had millions and millions and millions of dollars behind it, and then they're comparing it to some kind of backwoods show that didn't receive any advertising at all.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about? Let me just check and see if people are asking any questions. NobaFan21 gave us $1 Rumble rant and said, "Isn't the guy in the vid made famous from playing FPS games? He spent the past decade playing the same game, but worries games will be all the same thing." Oh, he's talking about the guy in the video. I don't know, Nade, whatever. I don't know who he is. I just saw the video was going around, and what the reason why I brought it up. His name is Nade Shot. The reason why I brought him up is because I think that there's like a lot of damage control coming out of like these like larger, more popular game streamers, and I think that it's probably astroturfed, and I think it's probably in service to the cathedral, and I think that it's probably a means to use clout to get people to buy games that that people would otherwise not be interested in. And I think
if you're talking about influencers, I have to actually kind of interject on that, because as you know, I have quite a few subscribers. I'm just big enough to actually see this in my own stats. So when you actually look at the stats of your videos and your engagement, when you're getting tens of thousands of views, and you can actually start seeing what gets you impressions. Impressions being the number of times that the algorithm actually shows your content to other people. And every single influencer or creator or whatever you want to call us, every single one of us that is above, I'd say, probably 25,000 subscribers, many even less than that. I mean, it's possible to notice this even when you're at 1K or something. But every single one of us, without question, unless they're just completely clueless, unless they're just a complete invalid and have zero pattern recognition skills, every single one of us knows that these big tech algorithms give you more clout and more impressions based on whether or not you have correct opinions. Like, for instance, right now, just to kind of go on a little tangent, I've already noticed that, for instance, any video that is critical of Kamala Harris gets less impressions, about 50% less. Just outright, you get less impressions if you're critical of Kamala Harris. Because I've been I've been actually looking at my stats.
How
and
is
I can
that possible? I thought that Hunter Avalon he debunked the the idea that supposed conservatives were getting throttled or otherwise like I wouldn't say censored,
using that brain dead study that those guys did. There was a really stupid study that he based that off of, where if you actually look at the methodology of that study, what they did was they compared mainstream media channels to each other, and they concluded that because Fox News gets more engagement than CNN, then conservatives are not being shadow banned on big tech, which is completely ridiculous, because that study was done after the CEO of YouTube at the time, which was Susan, who unfortunately recently passed away. But Susan, the previous CEO of YouTube, fully admitted that they were using a different algorithm for mainstream media organizations. And so then after she said that, a study comes out comparing the engagement of mainstream media organizations, and then makes the conclusion that it's actually a left being censored on all of the big tech, which is utterly just complete insane nonsense. It is completely wrong on every possible count that you could be wrong on. It was such a stupid study. It wasn't. If I were to call it a fallacy, I would just call it a blatant non sequitur fallacy. It had absolutely nothing to do with what they were claiming to do. It's like they might as well just show you a moose and then divide the moose by a cat plus a cactus, and therefore the left is not being. Yeah.
What do you
it's
think?
totally ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I know. So I agree. I mean, I've been doing YouTube for 10 years, and we talk about, well, I work with Honey Badger Radio. That's why this is called Honey Badger Arcade, because it's like my little side thing. But I mainly work at Honey Badger Radio. We've been talking about men's issues for 10 years. we've been extremely careful, diplomatic. Sometimes we get a little ragey, and our channel remains tiny. And in fact, there was one of the people on our team. His name is Dr. Random Cam. He's a guy from England. He's very talented, really funny guy, good with music. He was on the rise. He had like something like 60,000 subs. He was really big, and he was still helping us out, just coming on our shows. And he stopped uploading, except for very infrequently, because every time he uploaded, he lost subscribers, which was a strange thing. But like, we know that this is happening in that direction, where people who don't have the correct opinions don't get exposure, unless, well, there is like a bit of an unless, but I'll come back to that. But I wonder, and I think this is also true, is it also true, in your opinion, that people who have the right opinions get more of a boost, or is it just sort of like they're left alone and they sort of organically become big?
Are you aware of Adam something? Ever heard of Adam something before?
I don't. I know the name, I think, but I don't know who that is.
But I can't
He
say.
made really low tier content with very little effort into it. Just for instance, him talking into a mic with just a single background of a city, and he just spewed a bunch of correct opinions, and then suddenly got blasted up to the sky with the algorithm.
Oh.
It was a really weird case where he just got on his mic and made really low effort content, and then all of a sudden he has hundreds of thousands of subscribers from just doing that.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
like
so-
the approval process these days, it's got to go through a bot listener for copyright content, and I would imagine that they're just looking also for flag words and things like that, and writing that.
Oh yeah, they do. I mean, they blatantly do. They actually do check your content for wrongthink.
Yeah,
And they don't censor you. They just don't let you reach as many people. This is why I'm like doing this, mad scientist Dexter's Lab thing, where I have like a vertical stream and a horizontal stream and a Twitch stream and a Rumble stream, because I'm just like, I just want to reach people. and YouTube doesn't like me.
Yeah, it's specifically called demoting. In the Google's API, it's just called demote, I believe. That's what it was called, because there was actually a leak of their code that showed what they have for functions for actually deciding how the algorithm goes through things. And one of the things we found is that it's in the code to demote or promote certain topics. And that leak didn't actually show which topics were being promoted or which topics were being demoted. We just know that it's in the code that they could do it, which then, of course, just immediately begs the question, well, why would they have that in the code unless they're obviously using it? So It's not even really a conspiracy theory at this point. It's a fact, and anybody who denies it either isn't aware of the leak, or they're just, again, spouting that because they want to be put on the good boy list.
Right. They're either ignorant or they're complicit.
Right.
Ignorant or complicit. That's why I
Yeah.
called a lot of them grifters. I use the term grifters for a lot of them because, or the specific term I use on some of my videos is I call them prestige-seeking cathedral-like grifters, which means that they're just saying the opinions that are considered acceptable within the cathedral because they're seeking prestige within the cathedral. They want to get boosted and they want clout, and they don't actually care if what they're saying is true or not. And so, in order to prestige seek, they just spew the same crap that everybody else is saying. And that's why I call them grifters. They're just trying to earn money by saying correct opinions, even if they know it's not true. They're effectively just scammers.
Well, the prestige is really the appropriate word for it too, because for one thing, it is the glory seeking of the approval. But also, when you think about prestige in terms of, Brian's heard me talk about this before plenty of times, dark magic, and like what the prestige actually is the enchantment and just the beguilement, and the whole thing
Like
about
the three phases of the magic trick
yeah
from the
and
movie. Yeah.
I did a video about ESG stuff that actually uses the 3 steps, showing exactly, at least from my weird perspective, but yeah, like a lot of specifically, it's in the double speak and it's in the words, because we are being enchanted. This is, a form of dark magic that's taking hold and just playing out in mundane terms, because that's what seduction ultimately is mundane, boring stuff you don't pay attention to. Distractions are women in red dresses.
Yeah. Could you re-plug in your mic? Saf says. Who are you talking about, Saf? Let us know. I think that John sounds fine now. So, I want. Go ahead. What was that?
Oh, I said earlier I was away from my mic a little bit. I was like about 8 inches away. So now I'm chewing on it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, get in there. Get right up on it. Okay, so I wanted to ask, because I see a lot of other people discussing what's been going on in the culture war, and I think that sometimes the language is not quite right. And I wonder if you have noticed this as well, Mentis, or Airplay, if you're like consuming, like if you're watching YouTubers, because I like to, for me, the whole thing is like I just want this to be a conversation, and so if I'm not in the conversation, I'm looking at the conversation to see if I think that it's a productive conversation or not. And one of the things that I hear a lot from people is that like everything that's happening right now is just corporate greed. Now, and I think that's a really oversimple and a little bit imprecise description, because why would corporations have greed and profit as their primary motive while also trying to deliver content or products to an audience that doesn't like it? And when that audience says, I don't like this, they insult and attack them.
Oh boy.
Well,
yeah, Airplay,
recently, if I forget what his official title is, I think he's a geopolitical strategist, Peter Zion. He says that much of ESG and DEI is just corporations trying to figure out their place in a sort of post neoliberal order where we are currently seeing with social media over the past 10 years that there has been a lot more stronger voice of the public, and that if you want to gain political power, you're going to have to be a lot more populist in your stances, and so there's a lot more scrutiny on what corporations do, and so ESG and DEI are ways for large corporations to just take the focus off of them, to pretend like they are good citizens, to just give themselves an excuse for existing.
Yeah. One of the
basically
reasons
you're
why...
just saying corporate virtue signaling.
What's
Go
that?
ahead.
Well, I was just saying what he's really alluding to is just corporate virtue signaling and how it works. Like, for instance, on Pride Month, they'll all change their logos to the Pride flag and then change it back, and that's pretty much about it. They don't actually do much of anything else. And in a way, that's actually kind of a white pill. It kind of lets people know that a lot of this is fake. And in some ways, that's actually a good thing that it's fake, because it means that we're not actually as far gone as it appears. They're just doing what they think they need to do in order to fit in with the rest of society. They're effectively another way of prestige seeking to the cathedral. A lot of corporations that are already big, like for instance, let's just say Wendy's fast food restaurant, changing their logo for the Pride Month or whatever, something silly like that. That really doesn't matter.
Like
and
a
honestly,
drag queen,
nobody should
Wendy's.
really care about.
Yeah, I've been
Kinda,
reading.
but the reason they do that is not so much when you're already a big corporation. Prestige seeking ends up just becoming a survival mechanism.
Yeah, I've
It's
been
saying, yeah, we're good with everybody. We have the correct opinions now. Leave us alone and keep buying our product. That's what they're really saying.
Yeah, I've been recently reading Martin Gurry's Revolt of the Public. It's over 10 years old now, and it's really and in the forward, in the prescript, that it on the latest edition, the most current edition, of how he's saying it really predicted the rise of populist movements like Trump and Bernie and whatnot, and that the way that social media is going to be able to destabilize uh, established institutions and uh, established ways of doing things, and that in a way that the public already, the people or the public have some kind of voice now. Only in the past 10 years that that voice has been incredibly muddled, and that there are so many different is that there are so many different kinds of people. Like, I would say that Gamergate versus social justice advocates, that's one of the kind of conflicts that can arise when it's just one population against another, and it's really the public trying to put themselves and formulate different tribes.
Well, I think they want people to remain dimly illuminated, in a life that's lit by gaslight. It's just the halcyon glow of something that's kind of truthy, like, truthiness, as Stephen Colbert used to say when he was funny.
I was gonna say one of the reasons why I take issue with the greed argument is that it treats greed as something that only exists as a result of what people would call capitalism. I would call it.
Well, the reality is greed is good.
Yeah, right. And greed is a human thing. It's not a thing that is created because trade exists. Like when there was like two cavemen and one of them looked like he had a bigger piece of meat in his hand after the kill than the other, and that guy like essentially tried to get it from him one way or another. That was before they had currency or anything. Greed has always existed, and I just think that it's when people bring it up, they're framing a lot of times, and I think this is a product of the public education system, that the idea that people own things is bad because other people want them.
Yeah,
So.
and honestly, greed is actually a virtue, and it's a great virtue. Greed is just the logical conclusion of the reality that man wants things. And if you think about it, if man didn't want things, we wouldn't have anything at all. All of trade and all inventions and everything mankind has ever created is because of greed. We saw something and we wanted more, and we decided to turn this earth into something that we wanted it. And that's why we have the civilization that we have now. That's why we are not stuck in this permanent state of poverty that our ancestors from tens of thousands of years ago were stuck in, where they're just living in a cave or whatever and have nothing and die at the age of 20 of some kind of infection from just an animal bite or something, because they didn't have any antibiotics back then. Greed is wonderful. Greed is lovely. Everyone should love greed. All hail greed.
Well,
Greed is one of the best things that humans have ever had. And the whole greedflation thing, if you were going to ask about that, because actually it's funny you mentioned greed, because Harris just recently finally came out about one of her economic policies is going to be, and she's taking Robert Reich's take on the whole greedflation, where she's blaming the freaking PepsiCo for selling their snacks for too much money, rather than acknowledging why they're increasing their prices, instead saying that inflation is actually being caused by greed and not by the government printing infinite money and whatnot. That has nothing to do with it. Government regulations have nothing to do with it. None of the lockdowns have anything to do with it.
No.
It's just all greed. That's
certainly would be the Ayn Randian interpretation of greed, or
greed.
Yeah, that
the objectivist position.
Yeah, the objectivist position. It's more just I would say that it's more of just more of a human proclivity, human, just just a
it's
human
a
drive that
yeah, it's
all
a
hu-
human drive. It can have, I think
humans
it
are
can lead to violence or something like that.
yeah
But like,
negative repercussions, but
yeah,
that we all humans have drives, and and the best way to and what's construct and the best thing to do is to put those drives towards constructive ends in the way that'll in the way that'll benefit people and hopefully not be destructive towards other people.
yeah.
Right. In other words, just all you have to do is respect other people's property rights. Because yes, greed can cause a problem, but that's only if you do it unethically. That's only if you don't care about someone else's rights. As long as you do care about other people's rights, and as long as you are following an ethical model, then
Yeah.
greed is actually a wonderful thing. So that
Yeah.
doesn't really mean that greed itself is bad. It's actually just violating other people's rights that is bad.
Yeah.
Well,
One of my
people kind of conflate
Yeah.
that with disliking greed, which is an incorrect take, in my opinion.
One of my biggest influences was Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller, and I followed him over the decades or so. And recently he's come to be very questioning of just the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian just
Well, the Libertarian Party is kind of a joke, but if you mean libertarianism as a set of principles,
yeah.
or is he- okay.
And the way he puts it, if he put it on he was on Bill Maher's podcast recently, not the TV show, the podcast, where
Yeah,
he talks
something-
about where people
something
want
Club Random, right?
when Club Random, where he talks about when people talk about libertarianism, they always talk about the benefit. They always talk about the benefits of libertarian, but they never talk of libertarianism, capitalism, and whatnot. But they never talk about the responsibilities.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to come back to that. I think that I want to talk about libertarianism and if there is a space for morality in it. I think this has been coming up, like Dave Smith. I don't know if you guys like Dave Smith. I like Dave Smith. And I've seen him do a couple of debates. Oh no, he's like a comedian. He's He's been on Joe Rogan a few times. He's been really active after the coof.
Yeah.
The COVID business.
Yeah, a lot of people when they talk politics, they talk about the what is the benefits to their sides, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about one person that I do hear talking about responsibility is Vivek Ramaswamy, where he's talking about mandatory national service for all high school age young people as a prerequisite for voting.
Citizenship. Would you like to know more?
No. We don't need to feed the next young generation into
he's service. It could be the military, but it could be also just other means of public service, just some other forms of public service as a way to get people invested in their country and to actually invested in their other country, in all of their other countrymen that
I
no
can
longer turn
understand
out
where
to.
Vivek is. I can understand where Vivek is coming from on that. He wants people to care about the society that they live in, and so he's thinking that service is one way of doing it. The problem is that assumes that the best way to get in touch with your society is to join the state and do what the state tells you to do, because that's really what the current military works. And so that doesn't work at all. All that does is just learn to love America by bombing more children under 5. There's actually an interesting documentary from MRH Legacy called The War on Children Under 5. And I would recommend people listening to this who haven't seen that already give that a watch. It's 2 hours long, but it explains why putting people into service doesn't actually work, because the way the United States military operates, unfortunately, is very deeply evil and very deeply corrupt. We pretty much, all of our wars are based on lies.
Well,
I
it
hate
doesn't
drop
have to
this
be
massive red pill.
it doesn't
But
have to
yeah.
be military service. It could be things like helping out the disabled and the elderly, or helping out the sick and infirm, and whatever,
Though.
things like that.
Okay, I
Things
mean, well,
like
that's a little bit better. That's fine, but military, no. We spend way too much money on the military. We basically taxpayer fund genocide. That's how the United States military works. It's
We
very
literally take
stupid.
millions of dollars and turn it into weapons to blow up money. You know, I mean, ostensibly, that's what bombs are, right? It's a whole bunch
Yeah.
of money that goes up in flames.
And yeah, what I don't see from a lot of people on the left and progressive side, they keep talking about all of these about European countries with all of their with all of their big welfare states and nice social benefits. And what they never mention is that a lot of these European countries have mandatory national service as a prerequisite to many of those, to many of those social benefits.
If I could
Yeah,
ask-
and a lot of those European countries are even worse than the United States in terms of allowing leftism to take over their countries. So yeah, that's definitely not going to work.
Yeah, I just kinda wanted to circle back to when you're talking about, the benefit of greed. I believe that, there's prosperity is definitely something that people should strive for in what they do and to get rewarded for the efforts that you put in and be acknowledged. But greed's kind of a perversion of that. That's saying, well, I not only need my portion, but I need the whole system to fall in line with my control scheme. And that's, and maybe it's just our definitions of the words might not be parody.
Yeah,
But
it's probably just the way we're defining greed. You're probably thinking of greed in the form of greed where you just kind of ignore all other ethics. Then yes,
And
greed
that's
can
what
be
I'm
a
saying.
problem.
I think what you're saying is more towards the end of prosperity, more so than greed, because prosperity does have a balance in it where you actually have to kind of think about the larger implications of just sustaining yourself, because and that's the whole reason why I fully believe that corporatism fails, is because they're constantly doing everything for all this profit guided seeking, and that puts their intention in a certain place, so they immediately start shortchanging the nutritional quality of the food supply and things like that, and everything just becomes more derivative and just superficially done at at the most basic level. And that's what they try to pass things off to people in these tacky ham-fisted kind of prestige plays, as you're talking about, to get people to buy into the situation, just go along with it. And so that's kind of, like I say, I think it might just be our definition on terms, but I'm definitely for prosperity of the individual. But I do feel that the greed, because greed is more than just money. I mean, when you look at the extreme ends of the cultural divide, that's about greed. That's about the greed of my ideology, and how you're not actually allowed to have a differing viewpoint or perspective, or based on something as individual as your perspective. That's where we would find our strength as a nation and be prosperous, is if we could all be strong individuals that could compete and support each other in kind by actually operating on a level playing field. But that's long since been slanted.
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah, I'm defining greed as more of man following his desires within respecting property rights. I mean, that's why a big thing about libertarian theory, you have to kind of go through the Mises Institute on that and actually get into the ethics of it. The way the libertarian right works in regards to property rights is that the entire point of it is conflict avoidance, conflict reduction, in contrast to what communists do on their theory on property rights, which actually creates conflict. They're conflict inducing. For instance, let's say you make a factory building some small gaming handheld device, as an example. You got some factory, it's churning out all these little cheap devices that play games through the internet or something. And the theory you'll get from Austrian school, like so Mises, Rothbard, Hoppe, Rockwell, etc., is that once you've taken this piece of land and you've successfully properly homesteaded it by transforming it with your labor into said factory, making this small gaming handheld device or whatever, you then own that piece of land. You own that piece of property. And so the best way to avoid conflict in this is to treat it as a first come, first serve basis. So if someone uses their greed and your definition of greed to go into that, they would go and try and take over the factory and say that they own it. And what we say is that that is wrong, that the factory is not collectively owned by somebody else coming in after the fact that the factory has been built. Because if you believe that, you end up believing some pretty crazy things that don't actually make any sense, but mainly they're causing conflict. That is the problem. This idea that someone else can claim the land after it's already been transformed by someone else, after a factory's already there, that's just causing conflict when you decide that it should be collectively owned. Like, for instance, the Marxist theorists, what they'll do is they'll accuse the owner of this factory of some kind of exploitation, that the act of ownership of this factory is somehow an attack on everybody else. That's kind of why the far left is so big on victimhood. That's why you see victimhood narratives, and that's why you actually see a lot of social justice warriors of today playing the victim card on pretty much everything. It all kind of comes down to this core of saying that everyone's collectively guilty if they use the land in some other way. And if you're using this land to have this factory, you're somehow stealing it from everybody else, which makes no sense. And by making that accusation that it's theft, you're just creating a conflict. You're now having multiple people disagree on who owns this piece of land, when you could just do it, again, on whoever transforms it with their labor at first. And this is the problem, because people have to live and have to develop something in order to live. That's just how trade works. Man has to build something. Everyone has to have something that somebody else wants. Otherwise, you can't live. You're either a farmer producing food, or you're doing something else for the market that people are willing to trade their resources for. There's no real getting away around that. Everything we do is just to have a roof over our heads and have food on our plate. You can do other things in the market, like you can make clothes or make video games or whatever, but ultimately that is the entire point of why we're doing all of these things. And so when the Marxist comes in and says that, oh, you've stolen that land for your gaming factory, it has to be collectively owned, you're exploiting the workers at this factory by not paying them the full value of their labor or whatever, and then you get all surplus labor value theory and all that other collectivist rhetoric. And all it's really doing is implying that other people have the right to come onto your property and tell you what to do with it and take that property away from you. And that just creates conflict. And so the correct way to do greed, going back to the whole theory of ethics, is to just respect property rights, so you're not creating conflict.
Yeah,
Right.
I wanted to. Oh, go ahead, John. Did
Oh,
you
no, I
want
was
to
just
say?
Oh, I was just saying that's why I would call it prosperity, is because it is more thoughtful. Where to me, like greed is just, it's an ego-driven kind of. It almost becomes instinctual to the point that
Right.
there's no
I-
thought process involved.
I just wanted to say to that. I think that, well, like, okay, big picture thing. Okay, we live in a world with limited resources and unlimited desire. So people
Yeah,
have like they want
scarcity.
more than what is available. There's scarcity, exactly, yeah. And so, like, what is the thing that motivates people to get stuff, or at least want to acquire stuff? And I think that one of the things that is bit maybe a bit of a misnomer, or I wouldn't say misnomer because that sounds like an error. But one thing I would add is that what motivates men to earn and build and create and produce is not just the acquisition of things. It is actually women. It's what women are like. Men are after women. It's like there was like a comedy routine that says women like nice things, and then so they want nice things. They want comforts. They want safety. They want like a place to where they can raise children. This is an evolved thing, and men want women. So men, the reason why we have so much abundance and comfort is partly it was sexually driven for, you know, our entire species. And the decision to make a system that you know, we all operate within, so that people don't get you know, brutally murdered, like an ethical system of trade and dealing with scarcity, was, I think, designed again mostly by men for the express purpose of doing it in a way that protects women and children from, you know, essentially people who don't care about property, that will just take your stuff or, you know, raid your village or whatever. So they made it for that purpose. And I think that the communist approach is just another system that they're using to get stuff, but it's just unethical. So, and that goes with for the state as well. But this is, like, I think, why we're living in a time now where women are more and more voting for more and more statism, because they're seeing it as a workaround that, you know,
Big Daddy.
Yeah,
rather
not
than
just
getting
women,
it from
but
men
just
that are
leftists
being
in
productive.
general.
Yeah, leftists in general, but like a lot of, I think that leftism is a kind of feminine approach to politics. Like I had a discussion with a libertarian candidate for prime minister. I can't remember his name, but he was a good guy. It's just like, I can't remember off the top of my head. And we talked about it, and we both like landed on this idea that, and I'm not saying this just because I deal a lot with gender dynamics on my other show, but it's just what I've observed, is that generally men are more inclined towards libertarianism because they're more inclined to self-governance, and they want to be left alone, and they think the government's an obstacle, you know, more than anything else. And women tend to be on the side of more government. And you can also see this in the numbers where, you know, in the United States, I know this is a big tangent, so sorry for that. But in the United States, if you look at who the net taxpayers are, the people who pay into the system is mostly men, and the people who take out of the system and benefit from the system is mostly women. And it's, again, this isn't a slight on women. This is just like, it's a completely rational thing for women to say, you know, like, there are people who should be taken care of. And there are plenty of leftist men that would get on board with that, but they're not as likely to benefit from it. They're more likely to promote it. Maybe their way of benefiting from it is to promote it and be a good, you know, leftist dude, because maybe it'll get you favor with a woman, because it's just like what men are doing is they're just trying to find women, and they're using whatever tools are at their disposal. But sorry for that digression. It's just what I was just thinking about. I don't know.
I mean, at the core of it, it's actually just the reality that equality is a fake virtue. Equality is actually not really a thing. A lot of the whole woke mentality that all unequal outcomes are the result of discrimination, and thus people with those unequal outcomes are entitled to some kind of collective justice, that just means more conflict. That's the problem with equality. Equality can't actually happen. And so when you go for equality, you just create infinite conflict, pretty much. And this can create a problem because women tend to, because it's not all women, but I know not all women are like that. Or women do, in general, though, tend to be more psychologically driven towards liking equality, because in small-scale social interactions, equality and fairness make sense. And women are very good at those small-scale social interactions, and that's what women are somewhat wired to be within. They're wired to be nurturing and caring within their immediate community. However, you ask them to understand the society at large, as in the entire planet of billions of people, and it's very easy for Marxists to come in and kind of bamboozle women with the propaganda that we can expand this in a global scale for equality, and that is just not a thing. Equality is a massive, massive lie. It doesn't work at all.
Well,
leftists just
I would
kind
argue
of
that,
delude themselves.
Yeah, I would argue that equality of opportunity is also a lie.
Yeah, I think, you know,
like, it is.
The idea that equality is the ultimate outcome and the goal, like that, like equality is the method of travel, and the outcomes are on the individual. That's the equality of it. The equality is everybody gets their chance. And so, like, when they go and try to make it a bent situation to get everybody onto this, oh, well, we can't do equality, so let's do equity. But equity is vengeance in, like, the most plainest of terms. You know, like
Yeah,
Oh
there
yeah,
there
and
is.
it's collective
yeah.
vengeance. It's collective guilt, and that's one thing you can actually press a leftist on if you ever get in a debate with them. Is point out that if they believe in equity, they have to believe in collective guilt. There's no way around that at all. You have to believe that. And leftists, they kind of like to delude themselves into thinking that they're the ethical ones because they're
Well, they
aiming for equality.
themselves.
Their
They're both.
idea of conflict ending is equality. They think conflict will end once we've achieved equality. The problem is you can't actually achieve that. You can never have true equality because you aren't other people. Logically, there will always be something about you that is not the same thing as somebody else. So there's always going to be a little dingling of conflict in there. There's always going to be a straw to grasp to create conflict, as long as you believe that that conflict is okay, so long as it's to resolve equality, and that's the problem with leftist ethics at its core.
Yes.
It's irrational, mathematically, and just like socially. It just in terms of way people approach it, and it quite literally is like a number that can't resolve itself. No matter how much they try to divide it and do the math, it's always going to come off with like little data points that don't, and so like that's when they have to, oh well, we're going to like average it, and that's where you start seeing like the playing of the numbers, and then you're just kind of off on your own little blazing a trail to wherever you think you're going is where you think you're going, but that's probably not the destination you're going to wind up in. And I think that's kind of a short kind of statement on our current state and reality.
Can I?
The pendulum
also-
shakes angrily at the bottom.
Yeah. I wanted to mention something related to this. So one of the things that this is related to the ESG, DEI, BlackRock, forced behaviors, etc., or even the World Economic Forum as well, I think, is this concept. And I've made a video about this on my channel, but I thought I would bring it up and see what you guys think of stakeholders versus shareholders. Stakeholder, they call it stakeholder capitalism. I frankly don't even like the word capitalism because I think it was made by communists, but stakeholder capitalism versus shareholder capitalism. Do you know the difference? You've heard about this concept?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the market is either free or it's not. I don't like people using the word capitalism and things like, crony capitalism or stakeholder capitalism or
Yeah, or
shareholder
corporatism
capitalism
or crony. Yeah,
or
yeah,
corporate
I don't like
capitalism.
it.
The reality
Yeah.
is the market is either free or it's not. Read Hoppa.
No, that's right. No, that's what I've been saying for years. People will say, "Well, there are some problems with capitalism." No. You've already lost me when you said capitalism. But because that is a Marxist word used to already begin the process of making you think that something is unique in this way because it has this word. It's like you said, it's either a free market. You either believe in property rights or you don't, and that's it, right? But so the if you don't know, then the concept of shareholder capitalism is just what people know of as like you buy shares in a company. Not sure how I feel about like what you think about the stock market or buying shares in a company as a general concept. This is removing the fact that corporations are themselves not the products of a free market because they get a lot of support from the state. But leaving that aside, there is a difference. So shareholder capitalism is you buy shares, you own part of the company. This is like the concepts, collective ownership by buying shares. Stakeholder capitalism is very different. People have stakes in the company. They don't actually invest anything. They just say we have a stake in the company and how it is run because it affects us. So they use it as a tool to control or otherwise extract some resources from corporations by saying, well, we have a stake in how, let's say, environmentally responsible your company is. And that is a completely different animal. And it's something that what's his name? The guy, the why am I forgetting his name? The bald Dr. Evil from the World Economic Forum. Klaus Schwab. It's something that Klaus Schwab has said. He's talked about that we have to look out for the stakeholders, and it's essentially using this concept of stakeholders, which is it's slick because people they hear it and they just think it's shareholders. Like it's a very clever, sort of clever anyway, bait and switch for that normies won't catch. And then he's saying that essentially we should have a seat at the table by virtue of the fact that the existence of your business could impact us.
Yeah, what they really mean, I mean, I'm aware of what the wording between stakeholder capitalism and shareholder capitalism is. What I'm basically just trying to say is that it's fake. Stakeholder capitalism, all they're really saying is it's a fancy word to just say that capitalism should be beholden to everybody, that we should have fairness and equality, and that the corporations have to care about everybody else. And the thing is, that's true to a degree, but it's only true to the degree of non-aggression, and again, getting into libertarian ethics, whereas they're trying to say that anybody affected by capitalism thus has a stake in capitalism, and therefore all corporations have to care about all people, which is ridiculous, honestly. It's just another way of pushing communism onto people by renaming it. It's just ESG
Right.
being
It's
renamed
the
into
latest
stakeholder
rebrand.
capitalism.
Yeah.
And the normies are just going to think that it's just some random economical term, when it really is just the same nonsense we're seeing over and over again. And the sad thing is, I mean, they are correct to some very small degree. Because, for instance, if a company decides to, let's say, build their plant upstream from a city and they start dumping toxic waste into that stream, then yes, that is wrong. But the reason it's wrong is because they're negatively affecting the property of people downstream. It's wrong because they're violating the NAP. In fact, I've kind of pointed this out before. A lot of environmental issues, when you have a large corporation doing them, are in fact violations of the NAP. And that's what should really be something that people are caring about. You just have to actually have a real ethical model. And the problem I'm seeing with all this sort of terms being invented every few years, stakeholder capitalism being one of them, is that people are trying to accidentally discovering the reality that our society needs ethics in order to function, but they don't know what those ethics should be. People have forgotten the idea of ethics. You have people who they just don't understand philosophy at all, and so they're just making stuff up at random, or thinking that, oh well, equality is ethics. And that's another big problem with equality, is that equality ends up just kind of being a fake ethic, that people assume that it's more ethical if you have more equality, or the more democraticer we are, the more freer we are. The more people voting in the system, the more free the vote system is. And it's ridiculous. People
Right,
don't
but I mean,
actually study any of this stuff.
these are cheap and easy parlor tricks. I mean, it's, the sleight of hand and to slant the table to just kind of create the situation where people are looking at the smoke in the mirrors, and they got the stars in their eyes, and that's what a lot of this is really just about, because it works. It's simple and it's easy, and it like anybody who's actually paying attention can look right at it and see it for what it is. But that's the whole
Oh yeah,
thing.
they just change their terms and rebrand their same crap because
But
they
it's
know
like-
that they're lying.
But it's like they say right in the movie The Prestige, right at the beginning. People want to be tricked. They want to be beguiled. They want this thing to happen. And I would say, ultimately, it's not even so much the greed of money, but the greed of attention, and the focus of where we put our time, effort, and our reinforcement. And if it goes into the distraction rather than some kind of just alternate parallel economy that we always talk about. That's the thing, is that's why I made the video today about this independent game that's coming out that looks like it's actually made by people who want to just make a game for the sake of making a game and having a good time. And it's like, that's what we need to, make sure that we're actively doing, is, raising people up that aren't a part of this, bamboozlement that's just here to confuse everybody and get them to go along in the most basic way. Because ultimately, modern fascism isn't goose stepping. It isn't all this stuff that people. It's just compliance.
We're already living under it.
That's the thing.
It's already happening. It's among us.
Right. And if I can get you to wait around for 5 minutes while I do the thing because you were waiting there for 5 minutes, well, then I got what I wanted, and I didn't even have, and so that's the kind of, this is the Hunter S. Thompson form of fascism that he talked about that would take over America. And here we are. We live in a fucking clown world,
Mm-hmm. What were you going to say, Mentis? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying that's just, I prefer the word authoritarian over fascist, just because a lot
Fascist
of the
kind of
far
a
left,
buzzwords.
bread tubers use the word fascist to basically say things that they don't like. Their idea of fascism is whenever the Republicans are in control, it's fascist, which is ridiculous because both the GOP and the DNC
that's
push for authoritarian measures. So
right.
it's somehow it's not fascist when the DNC does it, but it's fascist when the GOP does it. It's really stupid. In reality, we should just be caring about authoritarianism. But the thing is, bread tubers don't like to use the term authoritarianism because a lot of the policies that they propose are authoritarian. So instead, so they bamboozle people by instead using the term fascism, and then they just trick people into thinking fascism is bad because it just is.
He has called it something.
Yeah, at this
else.
point, it is kind of everybody.
Yeah.
It is kind of everybody also. That's because they've taken over culture to the point where it is everyone now.
So if you're going to try to persuade people of your side, you're gonna have to demonstrate in some way how your side and your ideas are better. It's probably not enough to just tell people that they're being swindled because they like to be swindled. You'd have to demonstrate how their lives can be markedly improved by the philosophy and by the type of political economic system that you advocate for.
Right. I would say, because this is like I talk a lot about magic. It's just one of my things, but there's like different kinds of magic. You know, there's sorcery, which is obfuscation, and this is mine, and I'm going to do everything I can to keep people from it. And then there's wizardry, which is like, you know, actually like sharing your wisdom, prospering, not knowing that not every idea you have is going to be something that you can carry out to its end. So why not just put it out there so other people can do something with it? And then there's also witchcraft, which is just some crazy feminist. I have no, you know, beginning to understand because it's affected by the moon and all sorts of crazy stuff. But ultimately, you know, what we have to do and what you're saying is we have to demystify the magic and actually illuminate them with wisdom to see through the beguilement and the haze. You know, we have to, you know, you don't have to be a full-blown magician yourself, but you do have to know how the magic works so you can actually break it down when it's happening in front of you.
So I want to ask Mentis a question, because this is like something that I have a very strong libertarian streak in me. I was even like I looked very much into Ayn Rand, and I used to watch Stefan Molyneux. You know, I still like him. I even had him on my show. I got to interview him once. But I wonder sometimes...
Honestly, before you even get into it, I kind of want to interject. Ayn Rand and Stefan Molyneux isn't the best. You should be looking to libertarianism. Ayn Rand is good for just kind of Ayn Rand is Babby's first libertarian philosopher. Really, you should be subscribed to Mises Media.
Mises.
You should.
I get that. I'm just saying, like, years ago, that was sort of how I first got into it, was Molyneux and Ayn Rand, and I even like looked into creating a comic book with an objectivist hero, main character, but I never followed up because I wasn't sure how I was gonna make it work.
That's the question.
Well, Mr. A.
Mr. A.
Mr. A. Yeah, that's what the inspiration was.
Yeah.
So now you can use AI to make it for you.
Yeah, probably. Mr. AI. But here's the thing that I'm wondering about, and I'm sure you thought about this, but I think that the problem of actually implementing libertarianism is the problem of how do we get normies and people who are pretty poorly educated to sort of like adopt these principles, because I think that the human nature problem is like an obstacle, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because in a way that's almost one of the entire reasons I started my channel, just to be perfectly honest. It's because of this one problem, is that we don't have one thing that the Libertarian Party and libertarian movement in general sucks at, is we suck at fighting against propaganda. A lot of libertarians, I kind of said this at the beginning of the stream, a lot of libertarians have this very delusional belief that if we just sit inside of our echo chamber and talk about Rothbardian theory all day long, then one day everyone will just magically become a natural rights theorist. And that's just not how people work. We need to actually be going out and going and spreading our message to people in a way that people actually understand the message. We need to actually care about culture. We have to actually care about what people want. We have to actually show people what they can benefit from it. For instance, one major benefit that happens from libertarianism in practice is just cheaper medication. For instance, the healthcare industry, if you live in the United States, which I assume most of you, I think all three of you guys were, don't you all
Yeah.
mostly live in the East Coast? You're in the
Yeah.
East Coast of the United States.
I'm in Virginia. I think
Yeah.
problematic is like in the central time. So what is it, like Texas or something? Or
Right in the middle of everything. I'm Nebraska.
oh yeah, right, Nebraska.
Oh.
Yeah, you're in Nebraska.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
So anyway, and we need to actually find ways to outreach from the Libertarian Party rather than just staying inside of our echo chamber. And one thing that actually benefits people in sort of the healthcare industry, I was saying, is that when you get rid of patents, or at the very least reduce them, that actually creates a lot of competition. Because one thing people don't know about, because the media never talks about it, is that the reason healthcare is so expensive is because the FDA creates these unnatural monopolies. So one corporation is allowed to make this drug, one corporation is allowed to make this piece of medical technology, and that's where you get these crazy things like a saline bag costing $300 when it actually only cost the company that made it $2 to make. And so what you do is you abolish all of these unnatural monopolies that this has created, and then the healthcare industry very quickly fixes itself, and insurance costs and medical costs just immediately skyrocket down to something like 5 times, 10 times less than what they currently are. And so that's just one kind of thing if you want to go the consequentialist route of showing people what they actually have to benefit. Because that's one problem with libertarianism not really being a consequentialist ideology, even though consequentially we do have good consequences, because we don't really focus on that. People just kind of ignore it because most people, whether you like it or not, care about the consequences, because people who are not philosophically minded only really care about what's in it for them. And so that's
Right.
what libertarians have to do more of, is tell people, how do you personally benefit from a more free market? And we're not seeing enough of that, and libertarians are not properly countering all of the propaganda we're seeing from the media that runs counter to that ideology, whereas instead the media sort of just tells people that, oh, well, have free healthcare and that'll fix it. Make it free. Give all healthcare
Yeah.
the
Well,
power from the government. Have the
one
government
thing
do it,
that
and
yeah,
that'll work.
yeah. Well, one
And
thing
it
that
doesn't actually go.
one thing that I think not just libertarians but more market-minded people should start to advocate for, especially since you brought up healthcare, is just looking over the trends in healthcare, that we've seen healthcare crowdfunding become a major part of life in the past few years, is to just have a tax incentive for people to crowdfund medical costs, and that it's not a silver bullet, it's not, but it's going to be one way in which you can help get some of the burden off of people's back, where if you make donations to health, to crowdfund in a way, to campaigns that are crowdfunded to reduce for medical costs, and make that and incentivize that with tax incentives, you have a completely market-driven way of taking the burden off of people, taking one part of the burden off of people's lives.
Mm.
Are you talking about that one system that I think David Smith kind of occasionally shills for on his channel? Or are you
I've never
talking about
heard of
just sort
David
general
Smith.
crowd?
I've never heard of David Smith.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
I know. Yeah,
Never
that's
mind.
the guy I mentioned, Dave Smith, right? He's a comedian. Now he does like a lot of libertarian podcasts. He's been on Joe Rogan and other No.
Yeah,
Nobody?
but
Okay.
I think that if
Go
you
ahead.
just incentivize these kind of crowdfunding for like healthcare and other kind of uh, public services, with tax credits, tax incentives, and whatnot, you have a pretty you've got a pretty powerful combination of things, and something that I think that the Libertarian Party and the or just, as I said, more market-minded people should be advocating more for.
Yeah, that's something to think about. I do have to unfortunately wrap it up soon because my friends over at Honey Badger Radio are about to start a stream, and I don't want us to we don't want to cross the
Okay.
streams. So I'm gonna wind down.
Yeah.
I guess there was so many more things I wanted to talk about, but stupid internet problems didn't let it happen. But AirPlay, I wanted to, first of all, just for you, I want to put this out there. One thing that I wanted to do for AirPlay, so before COVID, I worked with Cassie J, who is a documentarian that made a movie called The Red Pill.
Yeah, I'm
and
familiar
of course,
with that one.
You're familiar with, yeah, of course, because you covered it in your AirPlay thing. And anyway, I was helping her to distribute the film so that it can play in theaters. So we were doing different sort of premieres because it wasn't going to get a wide release. It wasn't getting any support from the press or the media. Obviously, it was going against the broader narrative, which is ultimately going to affect women too, but it's okay. But I was helping her at the time, and we did a screening in Chicago in a theater, and I know there was a system, there was a service that let you do that. You pay some money, and then you can host your own screening of a film in your local theater. And I've been trying to figure out what it is. So I wanted to ask the audience if anybody knows anything like that. I mean, we could always do something online too.
Yeah,
I think that Corey Feldman did something for. But what were you gonna say?
If you wanna, though, if I wanna show this theatrically if I want to show this theatrically in a film, are you on right now? Because it seemed
on.
like there was yeah.
No,
if
no,
I
we
want
should
to
still be on.
If I want to show this distribute it theatrically, distributed on DVD or any kind of streaming service, I'm gonna need to have a lawyer review it, and for all the clearances and copyright and what that's a large part of what I'm crowdfunding for right now. And as I said during the stream, it is going to cost what's your policy on swearing?
You could know. Yeah, I'm bad about censoring myself.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna take a fuck ton of money to get this.
There might be
cleared,
another way. There might be another way. Maybe we can do it online. I think if there was a way we could do, because I did for your part 1, I did a, what do you call it, a watch party on my channel, and everybody sat down and watched it. But it didn't cost anybody anything. So we want to do it so that we can monetize it a little bit, just so you can cover the costs of making it and your labor and everything.
Yeah.
So,
the costs of labor is a fuck ton of money as well.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it is.
And I just want to comment that it looks like your avatar is possessed. This whole stream, it looks like your avatar.
Sometimes I go over here and I type, and she'll do this weird lean.
It seems like Viv needs an exorcist or something. Looks like
I do have oh, go ahead, Problematic. What's up?
Well, I just said I used to be a witch doctor, so maybe that's what I'm here for.
Mentis, were you gonna say something? I saw your thing light up.
Oh no, I was just leaning back in my chair.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's all good. Just like me, right? I was doing that. That's the lean. Yeah. Okay. This is a imperfect technology, but not bad. Okay, so yeah, we gotta like end it here, but I want to talk. Maybe we can do another show sometime with you guys if you guys want to. I want to talk a little bit about the in libertarianism. I want to discuss like what the moral, because there's like the ethical frame, the NAP, right? But then there's like the moral question that's been coming up. It's like a challenge to libertarians, like things about you know. I don't know, like your social things like drugs and porn addiction and sex and things like this. And
Oh
I
boy,
don't know,
time
there's like
preferences and abolishing civil rights.
yeah. So like but like I'm just curious about it because I think that there the NAP is like a really great foundation, but there's like a conversation to be had about some like other moral concepts that are not necessarily harmful directly, but could be. I don't know. I'm not. I just something I'm thinking about, and I think that another thing that should also be talked about if we want to make this concept more appealing, we have to find ways to make it appealing to women. So Karen Strawn, my good friend, you know her as Girl Writes What. If you know her from the internet, she was one of the biggest like sort of men's rights channels, and she's a big libertarian. And she said, like the libertarians have to be very careful about letting women into their party because you have to make sure that they're really down, and this is like not easy. And I know, painting with a broad brush, obviously not all women, but a lot of them. So, anyways, I want to give you guys all the last word, and then I'm going to end the show, and maybe we'll have you guys on. But I want to say thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with me, talking a little bit about Gamergate, and then talking a lot about property rights and stuff. And I thought it was really great. So, but first, I will give it to John. Problematic. Do you want to say like maybe shill where people can find you and stuff, and then we'll move on to the next person.
Well, obviously, currently I do Tuesdays and Saturdays, sorry, with you here on Honey Badger Arcade. But today I actually put out a video on the new video game Defect on my John Richards Problematic White Guy channel. That's just look for Problematic White Guy. You should find me, Problematic White Guy John, if it's that hard. But yeah, I'm just keeping busy, trying to get more involved with my tech and make these streams and videos better all the time.
All right, and Airplay.
Yeah, on a show if you wanna. Well, you can watch my film Airplay, my documentary film on air at on the X Twitter app. On my profile, AirplayDoc. You can see it right here, or on my Patreon, Metalhead Motion Pictures, patreon.com/metalheadfilms. All $10 patrons get to see the full movie, the full 5 hours. If you wish to assist with the production, you can I have a GoFundMe ready at just search Gamergate 10-year anniversary screenings or Airplay and whatnot. And I've got a YouTube channel under the same screen name, AirplayDoc, on YouTube.
All right, thank you, AirplayDoc and Mentiswave. You want to tell the people where they can find you and if they want to check out your stuff?
Yep, just Google Mentiswave and you'll be able to find my channel.
Yeah, he's bigger than all of us put together, probably. So it's probably not going to be hard.
Yeah, I should be actually saying that people should be checking out your guys' channel.
Yeah,
instead.
I know. Well, if you want to plug us, it's cool. I'd appreciate if you guys could subscribe. I have been doing this for a very long time.
Yeah, I remember when Mentis only had a few hundred subscribers, and I was subscribed to him then and said, "Hey, you want to do a stream sometime?" And that sometime turned into months and years, and now he's bigger than all of us.
Yeah. Well, I guess. What was that?
I say it was for the anniversary day, the anniversary of Gamergate stuff.
Yeah,
that's right. The anniversary of the Zoe post. Well, yeah, and again, thank you so much, Mentiswave, Problematic, and Airplay for coming on the show. Thank you guys for joining us. I see there's a lot of people here. I think it's really awesome. If you want to subscribe to the channel, please check it out. I do game streams. I post videos and I do live shows with John, and we talk about stuff going on in the culture. I am at my heart an artist that really cares about essentially the ethics of beauty and culture, and I see that is being like eaten away and eroded in all these areas. And so I'm trying to, like, you know, talk to people, grasp at something real and talk about it. So anyway, thanks guys for coming on the show. If you like this video, please smash that like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today, and please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you so much for coming on today's, well, this is just like a Gamergate stream, so thank you guys so much for coming on today's Gamergate stream, and we will talk to you all in the next video. Long live Vivian.
With the glass ceiling broken, all the oppressed groups shall prosper, especially the most oppressed group of all, gamers.
I want people in the industry to be a little bit louder about people being mean to other people, and maybe say it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe say we don't want you around if you're going to be a cunt.
Yeah.
And hateful. And that the games industry is diverse naturally. Not because anyone's making them be diverse. Because the world is diverse, you stupid motherfucker. And if you have a problem with that, come fight me. Physically. Bitch.
Has anyone taken you up on that yet?
No, because they're all pussies.
Yep.
Down here, salt is a way of life.
Obviously, the environment down here is all salt. The ceiling's salt, the floor is salt, the walls are salt, and to an extent, the air is salt. And you breathe that in, and you can constantly taste the salt.